Nick Wright from First Things First still trusts Joe Burrow over Lamar Jackson, even though Lamar Jackson has historically dominated the Bengals. But I'm going to get into that and react to the whole entire segment because there's just so much in there to cover. But before I do that, welcome to Flog Talk, your home for all things Baltimore Ravens football. If you're a Ravens fan and you're new to this channel, take a second, like the video, subscribe. We're trying to hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the season, and I need everybody watching this to hit that subscribe button to help me get there. I appreciate each and every one of you that tune into these videos and like and comment. But enough of that. This video is about Nick Wright on First Things First. The question was, who do you trust on Sunday more, Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow, in the Ravens' upcoming game against the Bengals? And we all know Lamar Jackson historically has done really, really well against the Bengals. I believe he's 8-1 in his career against the Bengals. So to me, common sense would say that you would trust Lamar Jackson because historically we can look back and say that he's gotten the job done. But this was Nick Wright's response to that.
It feels to me, and I'm not trying to be difficult, like your setup for this and your answer was as if the question is, which team do you trust more?
Well, the offense.
Well, but I showed two Lamar graphics.
But your answer was, I trust Lamar because Baltimore's going to win.
Yeah.
You guys discussed how the Bengals' run defense is bad. I agree with all of that. I think,
but part of Lamar is running.
Yes, agreed. And I think the Ravens' pass defense is equally as susceptible. To me, of the two quarterbacks I trust more, it's Joe Burrow, and it's not a question. Joe
overall or against the Ravens? Because he's not. We just saw his numbers. He hasn't been great against the Ravens.
So
again, great when they don't have Lamar.
So right, which is a weird math we're doing, which is when Lamar's not there, Joe Burrow's success against the Ravens defense doesn't count for some reason.
But Nick, you don't think it's about complementary football? You don't think?
Okay, this is actually a really good point brought up by Brew. And Nick Wright, I don't know. He's doing some serious mental gymnastics here to say, well, so what you're saying is when Lamar's not there, Burrow's success against the Ravens defense doesn't count. Of course it counts. But here's the thing. Lamar Jackson's been there the majority of the time. Yes, there's been a few matchups that he's missed in which Burrow has had success. But Sunday's game, Lamar Jackson will be there. Joe Burrow will be there. And historically, Lamar Jackson has dominated this matchup to go 8-1 against this team. So yes, when Joe Burrow primarily only beats the Ravens when Lamar Jackson's not there, that is significant. When you're asking who do you trust more to win this game, it has to be Lamar Jackson because historically he's shown that he normally wins these games. I don't know why he's just disregarding that. If Lamar Jackson was not playing in this game, then I would see his point and I would even probably agree with him. But since Lamar's playing, why are we pretending he's not?
If we look at over the course of their careers, post Joe Burrow's rookie year in 2021, Burrow was excellent. Lamar was mediocre and hurt. And when I say it wasn't just that he was hurt, that year he had 18 touchdowns and 15 turnovers. In 2022, Joe Burrow was excellent. Lamar was mediocre and hurt. In 2023, Lamar was excellent. Joe was mediocre and hurt. And this year, in my opinion, both have played great and both teams are a little underwhelming given their expectations. That's how I look at it. I think that...
So he was to totally go back and recap their entire career. That's fine. Since 2021, Joe Burrow has had arguably, and I think you could make a strong argument, the best receiving core in the entire National Football League. If they're not the best, they're certainly top 3 at worst. And I can't off the top of my head think of any that's been better. And Lamar Jackson in 2021 was mediocre and hurt. Okay, we all remember the 2021 season when it seemed like half the team went on IR. Like that was the most injury-riddled season. It was absolutely ridiculous. And Lamar Jackson still had them sitting at 8-4 by the time he ended up getting a season-ending injury. And when they were 8-3, they were, if I remember right, at the top of the AFC. So if Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, for that matter, did the same thing with a team that was as injured as the 2021 Ravens team, they would be glazed to no end. It would be almost inappropriate to listen to, the amount of glaze that these two guys would be getting. But because Lamar Jackson did it, and he didn't have the most statistically impressive season, then that's just, well, he's just mediocre. Look at what happened in the season. He had no team. The whole team was hurt. And he still had them at or near atop the AFC before he ended up bowing out for the season. In 2022, he lost his top receiver, which, no offense to Hollywood Brown, wasn't exactly a top receiver in the league anyways. He had absolutely, positively nobody, period. End of story. His receivers, James Prochet, Demarcus Robinson, Sammy Watkins, Oh my goodness. That does not even compare to who Joe Burrow is throwing the football to. Not even remotely. And they were still winning games. They still had a winning record by the time he got hurt. Again, the offense was trash that year, which of course is probably Lamar Jackson's fault. In 2023, he says Joe Burrow was mediocre and hurt. And this is where it gets interesting and just it's not even comparable. Because Joe Burrow in 2023 played in 10 games. He threw for 2,300 yards, 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and had just under 67% completion percentage before he got hurt against the Ravens. Okay? And their record was 5 and 5 with him under center. Jake Browning, the backup, who went in, first action was against the Ravens, so if you want to count that, that's fine. For the season, in all his game action, he went 4 and 5. If you count the games he played significant time, I'm not counting the first game of the season last year when he threw one pass in trash time. He played in 8 games and was 4 and 4. Had a 70% completion percentage, threw for 1,900 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. There was no drop-off when Jake Browning entered the season than when Joe Burrow was in. They were 500 with both quarterbacks. He threw for almost as many yards in less games. He had a better completion percentage than Joe Burrow. When are people going to wake up and smell the roses? A huge part of Joe Burrow's success, and I do agree he's a talented quarterback, but a huge part of his success has been he's been throwing to elite wide receivers since most of his career when he took over after he was injured in 2020 and 2021 when they made the Super Bowl run and the AFC Championship game the year after that. He's been throwing to an elite wide receiver core, and Jake Browning went in and replicated that success. It's unbelievable how are we not talking about this? And yet Joe Burrow gets hyped up and glazed to no end. And we saw his backup come in and put in almost identical numbers in the same amount of games. I digress. Let's keep it moving.
And I just think Joe Burrow on a game-to-game basis is a more consistent, better player. I trust him more.
You heard it here first, folks. On a week-to-week basis, Joe Burrow is a more consistent, better player, which is probably why Lamar Jackson has, I believe, the second highest winning percentage of active quarterbacks. That's probably why. Not very consistent. I agree, Nick. Oh, and you know what else Joe Burrow is consistent in? Losing at least the first 2 to 3 games of every single season. Consistency, folks.
If it's been about doesn't win enough, can't beat Lamar, and we all agree the Ravens right now have the more complete football team. If Joe Burrow goes out there on a team that can only win through him passing the football with a bad defense that can't stop the run and wins that game, and the Ravens are all of a sudden 2 and 3, same with the Bengals we wrote off for dead, what does that do to the narrative that I think a lot of people have been pushing, which is Joe Burrow is falsely elevated and Lamar Jackson is falsely or unfairly maligned, so to speak?
I don't know
Maybe why some people think Joe Burrow is falsely elevated. And again, no disrespect to Burrow, I think he has extreme elite talent. I mean, he can put the ball anywhere on the field. He can read defenses. He's mobile in the pocket. There's a lot of good things about Joe Burrow's game. But it seems to be overlooked that he's throwing to one of, if not the best wide receiver corps in the National Football League. And his backup went in last year and put in darn near identical numbers to him and an almost identical record to him with Jake Browning as your quarterback. And when Lamar Jackson has had times where he's throwing to absolutely nobody, and they're still winning games because that is Lamar Jackson elevating his team, the team around him, to be able to win games. Of course, they've had good defenses. That's obviously contributed to it. But offensively, when you have guys who would be maybe number 3 receivers on the team, such as in 2022 when your top receiver was James Prochet or Sammy Watkins. Joe Burrow has never had to play with a wide receiver room that looked like that. Maybe that's why, Nick. Possibly.
I don't know. There's too many.
I mean, even these guys are sitting there like, what the heck is he talking about? Like, they're lost for words. The mental gymnastics we're doing here to make it seem like Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow, rather, should be the answer in this question. I'm sorry. It would be the equivalent, and I might catch some flack from Ravens Nation from this one. It would be the equivalent to when the Ravens play the Chiefs if I were to sit here and say, well, I trust Lamar Jackson more than Patrick Mahomes. I love Lamar Jackson as much as anyone. The dude is an elite player, one of the best to ever do it. But historically, Patrick Mahomes has gotten the better of that matchup. We've seen that. So to say that I wouldn't trust Patrick Mahomes in that particular matchup, would just be kind of goofy in my opinion. And same thing here. Lamar Jackson has had even more success against the Bengals in that case. So just keep picking Joe Burrow. The thing is, if Lamar Jackson was not trotting out and playing all these games, they would not have the same record against the Bengals. So he is, in my opinion, the difference maker in these games.
So where is this world that Lamar Jackson doesn't get credit? I'm just curious that the reigning MVP
I mean,
of the league doesn't get credit.
You're sitting here trying to say
Literally right here. Literally. A guy who was 8-1 against the Bengals, and I think 4-1 against Burrow, if I remember correctly. And you're still saying Joe Burrow, you trust him more than Lamar Jackson. This is exactly why.
Lamar has won an MVP, with Joe Burrow has had statistically 2 A+ regular seasons. Lamar's had 1. In the playoffs,
Joe Burrow has been throwing to A+ wide receiver rooms. Lamar Jackson has not.
these teams have been looked at as, and the narrative was, Joe Burrow is living off that one win against Patrick Mahomes. Meanwhile, Lamar is wildly disrespected for what he has done and continues to do, and we are a field goal spread away from through 5 weeks of this season, where Joe Burrow's team was left for dead by many, and we're talking about Lamar. They've got the most dominant rushing attack in modern NFL, that actually the Bengals are better than the Ravens. And that, to me, will be about what Joe Burrow is able to do.
So if the Bengals win this game, that means they're better than the Ravens?
I mean, I thought the Bengals were better than the Ravens from before the year, right now, moving forward, because of what I believe Joe Burrow can do. Because of what I believe that passing attack can do. I think they're going to win this weekend. I think they are the better team.
6-8 in his last year and a half of starts.
Yes.
6-8.
Yeah.
So.
Listen, I've had my fair share of criticism for the Ravens to begin this season, and some of it I think was justified. If you're even going to sit there and compare what the Ravens have done to what the Bengals have done, you are so desperate to make this argument work. I'm sorry. This is stretching to the highest degree. Both teams lost to the Chiefs. Okay, fine. That's fair. The Bengals also lost to the Patriots, which, by the way, is the Patriots' only win thus far in the season. And they lost to a rookie quarterback at home, and they couldn't do anything. And I'm not necessarily laying that at Joe Burrow's feet because they scored every time they had the ball. But the Ravens have played a much tougher schedule and are still sitting at 2-2. They had a bad loss against the Raiders, 100%. But to sit here and say that the Bengals look even remotely better right now from what we've seen the last week or two, I don't know what you're watching, to be honest with you. And if I thought the Ravens looked like crap, I would be the first one to sit here and say the Ravens look like crap and the Bengals look like the better team. I have no problem doing that. I'm not saying that right now. Maybe they'll come out Sunday and light up the Ravens. I'm not ruling that out. But how are you going to say that you think the Bengals are a better team when they have done nothing to show you that? Yeah, we can all say it. That's what we think. I believe Joe Burrow is going to do this, but they haven't done it. I like to go off of what I see. And thus far, the Ravens right now look like the better football team. Ravens Nation, I need to know what you guys think. Do you agree? I'm assuming you don't, but what are your thoughts, I guess, on Nick Wright and his takes in this segment? Because to me, look, I've agreed Joe Burrow has talent. I agree he's a very capable quarterback. And he's not a guy that you want to take lightly because he is ultra talented. But to not acknowledge the weapons that Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson have had in their offense. Last year, Lamar Jackson, that was his best passing season. And granted, it was the system is changing with Todd Monken, and that's fair. But his best receiving option, obviously Mark Andrews, but if you're talking wide receiver, was a rookie wide receiver. And I love Zay, but we're not going to argue that the Ravens wide receiver room is equivalent to the Bengals, even now. Because it's just not. If you're looking strictly at wide receivers, I mean. But I want to know what you guys think. To me, I don't know why we can't just call a spade. Lamar Jackson in this matchup with the Bengals, to me, it's a no-brainer. You trust the guy who is 8-1 against the Bengals and 4-1 against Joe Burrow. That's who you trust in this game. If it was the other way, you would trust Joe Burrow. Against Patrick Mahomes, I would say give Patrick Mahomes the nod for the exact same reason. Go off of what we've seen historically, that oftentimes points you in the right direction. Not always, but oftentimes. Again, let me know what you guys think. Ravens Nation, hit that thumbs up button if you're still watching. It's kind of a longer episode. Subscribe if you're new. All we do is talk about your Baltimore Ravens. I appreciate y'all tuning in, and I will see you all in the next video. Go Ravens!